Hello, everyone. We're all very excited because actually it's the first time we're stepping on the set. So we've been in the rehearsal room for 4 weeks. Well, this beautiful group of people have been. And so this is the first encounter between audience and actors and set. And this is a little bit of a frisson going on here. For those of you I haven't met, my name's Lee Lewis. I'm the artistic director here at Queensland Theatre. And I would like to take this chance to thank you for joining us on a great adventure that is a new play, the winner of the Queensland Premier's Drama Award. So yes, the beginning of a brand new story on these lands, the lands of the Yagara and the Turrbal people. Stories have been told on these lands for tens of thousands of years. And it's at the moment when we take a writer's new words and make something out of nothing that it reminds me of how lucky we are to actually get to continue that tradition on these lands. Because there's nothing more exciting than making a new play. To take something that hasn't existed and to make a thing that then has an impact on people across time. It is an extraordinary experience. And I want to pay respects to elders past and present who have been responsible for the transmission of story across time so that a culture can continue. And I'm reminded constantly that if we don't tell our stories in the ways that we want to tell them in our words, that future generations won't know who we were. And that the passing on of story is actually one of the most important things we can do culturally. So here's to another 65,000 years of telling stories on these lands. And it's a real pleasure for me to welcome this group of extraordinary artists led by the fabulous Daniel Evans. Woo! I missed the moment. Led by the Matilda Award-winning Daniel Evans. The winner of Best Director and Best Main Stage Production for his production of Almighty Sometimes last year. So thank you, Daniel. This play, Drizzle Boy, was written by Ryan Enniss, and it was the winner of the Queensland Premier's Drama Award last year. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what that means. This award happens every 2 years. We go out around the country and invite playwrights to send in new works that have never had production before. And what's extraordinary about this award, which is supported by the Queensland Government, the Premier and Griffith University, is not just that now there is a great cash prize of $30,000 for that playwright, but the play is guaranteed a production. Now, I don't know if there's another theatre award in the world that actually guarantees production because it's petrifying. Making a new play, it's a huge gamble for a company to do. So the fact that we actually guarantee it means that the playwright gets to do the thing that they intended when they first sat down at the blank page, is see those words meet the audience. It's not always guaranteed. In fact, it mostly doesn't happen. So the fact that they know that if they win it, it will be on the stage is extraordinary. So over 200 playwrights around the country sent in their plays. A team of about 15 Brisbane theatre makers read all of the plays. Each play was read 2 times anonymously, and then we got into it. They started to recommend out of their pile the ones they thought everybody else should read. And so probably about 50 to 60 of those plays got read 15 times. And we have a conversation, an amazing conversation with this group of artists, theatre makers, about which plays they thought were most urgently needed for the Queensland audience. So out of that group, those 50 or 60 plays, that group of artists generated a long list, if you like, of 10 plays. And then a judging panel met with all of those playwrights and talked about the plays. So up until that point, it's been anonymous. Then the judging panel meets the 10 long-listed writers and talks about the plays, what they hope for it, why they think it's urgent, why they think it must be here for this audience. And then from that, 3 plays are selected. And those 3 plays get then development over a few months. They get assigned a director to work on the play. They get professional actors. We do weeks, days working on the plays in the way that they would like. And then there's a finals day where the 3 plays are read to the judging panel and the audience, and from that, 1 is selected. Huge process, but that's halfway. At that point, the winning play last year was Drizzle Boy, and as one of the people on the judging panel, I watched this play rise up from over 200 plays to be the play that grabbed everybody's heart. And at that point in winning, I was like, oh, part of my job is to kind of go, which director? And of course, I'm one of Daniel Evans' biggest fans, but Dan won this award years ago when there wasn't a big cash prize. He's not forgiven me for that yet.
There was no money.
But he is a writer and a playwright, and an exceptional playwright of new plays. So we're very lucky to have him in the company. And so he was my first port of call. And now, I'm just going to say to you, Daniel Evans, this play lands with you, and it's a very particular play. Do you want to talk to me about this play and what it was for you to receive this play from Ryan Enniss?
Yes. Look, no, I didn't get any cash from mine.
Are you still hung up on that?
And I was like, well, Ryan, you're ahead of me. No, I got this beautiful play in my hands, and Lee was like, what? She kind of said, would you be up for directing a new play? And yes, you hear the words new play and you go, ooh, that's like being asked to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and you go, all right, here we go. And I met with Ryan and Lee. Actually, we had a beautiful conversation about the play, and Ryan was the most delightful young artist who was so so beautiful and so almost, I don't want to say shy about his idea, but he was like, it was very much an idea that I felt still was in the clutches of his hand. And I kind of went, what would happen if he just kind of let that go and let this thing unfurl and be the most beautiful incarnation of this thing that it could honestly be. And at that point I was like, because you don't just meet a play and go, I'm going to direct it. There has to be a simpatico between the writer and the director. And I remember I said to him, one of the most, I think it took my heart. It took my heart right in the ending. You always look at beginnings and endings, and the ending got me. I don't want to spoil it, but no, I won't. No, but no, don't do it. I'm so bad. I was about to say it. So I saw the ending. I went, this ending is amazing. It's so magical and beautiful. And then Lee contacted me about 48 hours later and said, let's do it. And I went, okay. And you kind of spring to action and you go, right, it's time to assemble the crew. And it's a bit like the opening of like Infinity Avengers or like, what is that, Infinity War? Yeah, Daniel's put me onto Marvel. I'm a convert. Or like the A-Team. And it's kind of like I was going, who could I get to help me realise this world? And the first person I remember talking to is Saffron Benner, dramaturg Saffron Benner, who is a bit like everyone's laughing. She's like a coach. She's like a hardcore, and a dramaturg is someone who kind of looks at the bones of a play and goes, right, what are we doing? And kind of gets down in the mud and goes, right, what do you want to do with it? Where do you want to take it?
Because there's a big difference between a script. Big journey to go on for a new script from winning the award to being where we are today, right?
Correct. And so that was kind of, and getting Ryan to articulate where he wanted to take it, and Saffron kind of encouraging him and going, where else? What else might happen here? And he just kind of leapt at it, and he is one of the fastest writers I have ever encountered in my life. We had a conversation with him, and then within 24 hours, he had not only a new draft, but 54 extra scenes. We had to clear out the QTC. Well, it was wild. And we had to clear out the Queensland Theatre boardroom because we had to just reams of paper. And I was like, oh my God, which was a dream. And so we spent a large part of the end of last year patchworking and collaging together what would eventually become what you're going to see in season. But we actually didn't finish the performance draft until Saturday because a new work, because a new work is you are meeting it with every run, with every scene, with every moment. You're kind of going, what is it? Is it that? Is it that? Is it that? And so you don't want to lock it off until the very last minute because you go, there could be something else in this.
So in working on a new work and knowing that that's the case all the way up till Saturday, and that's, before we add in you assembled this beautiful group of people. And I'm going to, at this particular point, it seems appropriate to get them to introduce themselves.
The Avengers.
The Avengers. Let's start at this end.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Matt Scott. I'm the lighting designer. I just wanted to say it's a great pleasure to be back here at Queensland Theatre. I kind of started out here, which is pretty amazing. The last time I was in this room, it looked very different. So It's so good to be back to doing something for you guys.
Hello, my name is Guy Webster. I'm a composer and sound designer working on this show.
Hey everyone. My name is Nevin and I'm the projection designer.
Hi, I'm Christina Smith. I'm set and costume designer.
My name is Daniel Nixon and I'm playing the role of Drizzle Boy.
Hello everyone, I'm Kevin Spink. I play the role of Daniel's father, Hans Asperger, a person called Google, you might know them, and Baphomet, which is a half man, half goat.
Hi everybody, I'm Naomi Price. I play Juliet. I play Mum. I also play Google. And I play the first woman to ever go to space, Valentina Tereshkova, who celebrates her birthday today. Yeah.
And?
Do I play someone else?
Yeah, you do. Are you going to say it or do we keep that surprise? Someone who
Oh, God.
Made that movie, Rain
Oh,
Man.
yeah. Sorry, I forgot my most pivotal role is Dustin Hoffman.
So now your interest is awakened. How is Dustin Hoffman in this play, Drizzle Boy? Dan and Daniel, would you like to actually have a crack at telling us what the story of Drizzle Boy is?
Sure.
With not too many spoilers.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to avoid. Essentially, Drizzle Boy is a coming-of-age story at its core about a young autistic man who is navigating himself through life, through his adulthood, through his relationships with different people, and also through his trauma and some experiences and events that have shaped his upbringing. And so we meet this character who essentially is preparing for his first day of university. And then he gets plunged into the world of unknown. And we sort of follow him on his journey as he sort of takes claim to some events that he wants to have another crack at. And he also jumps forward in time, jumps sideways in time, and approaches different moments in his life with a different attention. And so towards the end, we kind of experience and we should kind of share a journey of growth with the character, and also how his relationships have evolved.
Oh, very well. That was good.
Is that okay?
That was very good.
Oh!
So this is the first play that Queensland Theatre is staging, which is written by a neurodivergent playwright. There's a whole process that the company's been going through to learn how to support Ryan, how to support this team in the making of the story, and how to support audiences in coming to see this. So I suppose my first question to you, Dan, is I hand you this play with an inherent company challenge inside it as well as a storytelling challenge. How did you start and what has been your journey with this play up to now insofar as a world that you weren't necessarily personally familiar with?
With extreme privilege, honour, but also listening. I think the first thing I was keen to do was listen to a lot of people and kind of understand the experience of autism from a number of groups of people, be it people with autism, be it teachers, allies, and also, who I'll point out now in the third row of the audience over there, my fellow collaborators and people whose work I admire, which is Indelibility Arts, over there in the black shirts with the red hearts on, who do this work all the time. And it's not, it's a journey. It takes a lot of work, a lot of listening, and a lot of, I guess, back and forth with people to make sure at the heart of the day, at the heart of this whole thing, one thing stopped in my mind, and it was the first conversation I had with this wonderful artist next to me, Christina, and I said, the only thing I want to hold on to in this whole thing is that this is a work where the audience should meet Drizzle Boy in his world, and Drizzle Boy should not have to bring his world to us. And I felt very passionate about that. And that was the one thing I went, I don't want anyone to have to change or to have to explain themselves more than they need to in this work. And so that's why I'm really glad that we have been on a journey where we kind of went, how can we make a theatrical rocket ride for people into a universe they may not be familiar with, but one that is definitely worth visiting.
So you are not neurodivergent.
No, I'm not. I'm neurotypical.
You're neurotypical. Okay.
NT.
So you picked up the phone. You called.
Yes.
You called Cat and Beck.
Called Cat and Beck. Also spoke to amazing Griffith University and the Autism Centre of Excellence, and an amazing professor there called Professor Dawn, and had a huge chat and went, what do I do? How do I do this? And they're like, it's all good. Like the fact that you're even asking the question is actually, that's the work. And so the work is actually listening and wrestling with it and kind of having a very honest conversation. And quite apart from meeting everyone and coming to Drizzle Boys Universe, I was very passionate about, and so is Ryan, it was very particular that a neurodivergent actor should play this role. And so I guess the biggest part of this process was a nationwide search. It kind of sounds like Australian Idol, doesn't it? For someone to play this role. And into this space about 6 months ago, not even 4 months. Yeah, 4 months. This amazing artist entered. And since then, it has been an evolving conversation about how we can best support Daniel in the room and what are the conditions we need to create to make sure he can do his best work, but also so the other artists can do their best work. And then also a lot of listening to Ryan and learning very, very quickly that despite what we may have thought, autism is not a linear spectrum. It is not something that goes from one end to the other. It is a colour palette, and that no one person with autism is the same as anyone else.
There's actually a great line in the play, isn't there? What is that line about?
The line is your line.
There's a saying that goes, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person.
And so it's been a very rewarding, amazing process, and part of what, maybe this is a good segue, what we have been focusing on is, and what Ryan and I and Saffron and then the entire team has come on board, is to explore a coda whereby we can build into this work a different way of viewing theatre, but perhaps a safer and perhaps more protected way for audiences who are neurodivergent to enjoy this work just as much as those who are neurotypical, because it's made for everyone. And I think one of the messages of the play that Ryan was very keen to communicate is that this is not about us and them, it's not about one or the other, this is about everyone meeting each other in a spirit of empathy and kindness. And that's what he wants everyone to take away, is that actually if we just treated everyone with a bit more kindness, and if perhaps Drizzle Boy at some stage had been told he was fine, then things may have turned out a little bit differently for him.
So, Christina, you're given a new play. It hasn't existed before. Someone likened a new play to walking through fresh snow, no footprints to follow. And where did you start? You start with the script, and then what was the first place that you went to, and how did that end up with? Well, we're seeing the framework of what we're going to see in a few days' time.
Absolutely. How did that end up as a big blue circle?
Yes. How do we have a big blue circle?
Yes. Well, it happened very quickly, I must say, because the call to come and do this show, it was a very compressed timeline.
Yeah, sorry about that. One little explanation. The play won the award in the middle of the year. We knew we were going to do it, but I thought it would be late in the year. I thought it would be like a September play. So I'm like, oh, Dan, it'll be September. And then as what happens with programming a season is that something else shifts around, and suddenly the play that you were going to do in February, March can't happen because the director or the writer or something needs to be later in the year. And so very quickly, I said, hey, Dan, you wouldn't happen to be free in February, would you? And he was like, well, yes. And I went, great, because we're moving Drizzle Boy to that. So I really need you to find a designer really quickly, and we've got to get onto that. So that accelerated it by about 6 months. Sorry about that.
No, no, great. No, really
Yeah,
good.
that was a great phone call.
It was-
That was a great. I think I was driving. I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great. What's the month?" Ah! It was wild, fantastic, but it was good.
It was good. Well, it's interesting because I was sort of saying to someone that with COVID, and I live and reside in Melbourne, I feel very fortunate to be brought up here to work on this, that because of COVID and having plays cancelled, my next show, I've been working on it for 2 years. I've been designing the show for 2 years, and we've just got to get it on now. And this was the polar opposite. It was like an aerobics class in, like, oh my God, like super fitness, where we're going to walk in a few days. We're going to meet each other because we hadn't met each other for years.
Yes,
And you hadn't seen the theatre since it had been renovated.
I had not seen the theatre since it had been renovated. I'd never worked in the theatre. It's like, okay, let's do this. Here we go. But I think the really, as Dan explained, the starting point from it was the world of Drizzle Boy. And that was very important, I think, to have a space that at times, maybe at first, that he was in control of and is able to utilize in which to tell the story. But at other times, it doesn't go his way. It actually, it's a space, I think, that loses the reins of a little bit, has a little bit of mind of its own. In a sense, it's very much a storytelling space. It has everything he needs to tell the story, but it's also, I guess, betrays him a little bit in that sense. I don't know how much I should say about this space. It is I don't know, you can probably tell what this is, right? I'm sitting on I can say this, yes? I'm sitting on a ring revolve, and you've probably seen this ring revolve. I think it was it last in here in Bernhard Hamlet? Maybe it was last
It's
time.
now
Yeah,
becoming
and
an old friend.
it's your old friend, but maybe you've never seen it in such an exposed way.
We call it the Susan, the lazy Susan, and the outside one is Susan, and the middle one is Suzanne. Yeah. They're sisters. They're sisters, and sometimes they miss their cue. They do, yeah. And Suzanne on the outside has a long way to go, and this one doesn't as much. Yeah.
But in a way, it's like it's a physical space that allows us to, in the piece, we actually time travel in a sense. We're traveling through memory. We're traveling through time. The boundaries get very blurred, and so the idea of being able to move the bodies in the space was immediately very interesting to us.
Yes, and that idea of orbiting, because of course the biggest thing for Drizzle Boy is that he is desperate. He is in love with space. He loves space, and so the idea of orbiting became very important. And Copernicus.
And Copernicus, the concentric rings. Oh, there's a lot of motifs at work here.
That's a lot.
No, it was fascinating watching, again, part of my job is matchmaking and between directors and designers. And it was it's always a bit of a gamble when you throw a couple into a room and go, okay, come up with the design, and actually really quickly, because I moved you by 6 months. And what was actually quite magic was, by the end of the day, I walked in and there was a working idea. The revolve happened quite quickly. And sometimes when there's extraordinary pressure, you don't second guess yourself. And a new play will second guess itself all the time. So on a certain level, you need an experienced team who know when to go, yep, that's the idea. And that can solve a lot of the big moments of the play, and we know what that piece of machinery is. But actually there's an imaginative liftoff from that piece of machinery into a world of possibilities. And by the end of the day, they had the revolve. It was a couple of days later that they decided to tilt it, at which point Workshop had to get involved and go, this is actually physically possible and we can build this. But that worked out okay too, because Pete Sands, awesome. Yeah. There was a moment with Pete Sands, and I don't know if you've met Pete. Oh, you would have met him a couple of years ago. One of our, the Giving Day campaign had footage of Pete. He looks very gruff, and he doesn't actually, he'll look at designs and he'll go, yep, and then you know you're good. So he heads up our construction workshop. But once you got a yep from Pete, then everything was possible, right? Yeah.
That's exactly what we got, was a yup. Like, is this doable? Is the physics doable? Yup.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
No, and Christina and I, after like 4 days of mad designing, we're like, together. We were bonded. We were like Thelma and Louise. We were like, come on. Don't put us over the cliff.
Yeah, okay, that story didn't end that well. Just going to put that out there. So let's not like Thelma and Louise, no. So Daniel and Kevin and Naomi, it takes a certain courage for an actor to take on a new play because there's nothing telling you that this is going to be okay. You know, if you're taking on a classic, you know that it's an Arthur Miller, it's worked out okay. Yes, how good are you? You want to play those roles, all of that sort of stuff. But it's a bit of free fall, isn't it, when you take on a... So what makes you read the play, what makes you go, yes?
Well, weirdly, I was just thinking, I've only ever done new work at Queensland Theatre, which I'm now starting to think is a bit of a stitch-up. And the last time I was on this Revolve was in Ladies in Black, in a pair of stilettos.
So different Revolve.
Oh, it was a different one.
Much
okay,
nicer.
okay.
Yeah.
This is better. I think what Dan said about the play having heart is something that always connects with me when I'm reading a text. I was hesitant about coming in to read for this role because I haven't done a play for 4 years, and I also run my own company, so I was nervous about taking time off to do this. And I mean, I'm pretty good, but when I got the sides and I had to read for the love interest and his mother, I was like, this is going to be real sticky. And then Dan was like, no, just come in, it's going to be great, you know, whatever, what have you got to lose? And I came in and I met Daniel and I read with Daniel, and then like that weekend I was like, so Dan, when do you think we're going to find out if we've got the role or not? Because I was like in love with it. It was just so special being in the room. And I think, you know, what Lee was saying about it being fresh snow, you feel like you're kind of, I guess, like charting uncharted territory, and you're as much a maker in the work as the designers and the director and the writer. It's so different to being just given a text and you're kind of like, will I be as good as the girl that did it on Broadway? It's not like that. And I think for us, it's certainly like, it feels like a privilege to be able to speak somebody's words for the first time.
The first thing that attracted me to the script was to pay my rent, because I thought, yes, I've got a job. You know, that was definitely the first thing, and then you flick through the script and you go, there's 20 costume changes here. There's 5 different accents. This is a challenge. And Lee has this great analogy which we've used. It's like fresh snow. This is a jungle. And there's no moonlight. You're nude and you're running through the jungle, and you have to cut yourself a path. The Amazon hates us because we have cut down so many trees printing scripts. In 1 week, in 1 week we had we recycled. Yeah. We had 96 pages. Then we cut down. We literally locked off on Saturday. So building brain synapses, if for any actors out here, you need time to learn, but we've ran it, and it is magic. I've done some plays, but this is by far the most magic ever.
But he's still nude in the jungle. And I'm up ahead going, follow me, it's this way.
Just to be clear, there is no nudity in the show.
I guess for me, I had quite a personal reaction and experience when reading the script for the first time. It was very moving. It was very emotional for me to read it. And the version I read is not the version you're going to see by any stretch of the imagination, really. There's probably only about 3 or 4 scenes from the original script that I read that are in the production. The rest of it was a series of, I think when me and Dan talked about it, is sort of like vignettes and scenes and sketches almost. And so it played out like very independent scenes that were sort of compiled together. And so for me, I found the journey through this character in the individual scenes. And every time I would flick through a scene, I had quite weirdly enough, a very personal reaction in terms of some of the stuff has happened to me. Some of the words have been said to me. Some of the relationships, including the ones with the Drizzle Boy's parents, are incredibly similar to my relationships with my own parents. And that was really strange. It's so, when I often read scripts, I'm under the assumption that they're written by neurotypical writers, and their characters are very rarely written as a neurodivergent character. And if they are, it's often alluded to. It's never actually raw and in the forefront. This was the exact opposite. And that, for me, was incredibly, enriching to know that somebody out there has had similar experiences to mine and has decided to tell a story through a very strong neurodivergent lens. And that, for me, just hooked me, because I read it and I emailed my agent and was like, holy cow, I need to audition for this. And they were like, yes, I thought you'd have that reaction, Daniel. Don't worry. We'll organize it. And then coming up to audition, because I'm actually residing in Melbourne, originally from the UK, but I'd come up from Melbourne to Queensland and was just like itching to talk about the script and do what I'd been practicing and just reveal a little bit about me in the room. And I think it was so much of the personal parts of the script that I connected to that I just kind of fell in love with and really, really, really wanted to do the play. So yeah, I'm very glad that I am.
Now, there's a strange little secret about this cast that I think happened, that you discovered in the auditioning process and in the casting process. What is that, Daniel Evans?
Well, I went to Lee and I said, I think I've got the cast. And she said, yes. And I said, how do you feel about the best of the Brits? And she was like, explain. And as these three came into the room, I tested this trio together, because I'm always looking for like a frisson and going, oh, how do I feel? How do they all sound together? And as they talked, I was like being at a family reunion, and they were like talking about like UK candy and like soccer football teams. Is that what you call them?
Arsenal, yeah.
Yeah, football teams. And then like Kevin was going, oh, do you follow Arsenal? And then Daniel's like, I love Arsenal. And I was like, what is going on? And the more they talked, they discovered that they grew up like 20 minutes, like, you guys.
Our fathers are both from the British forces. They served 22 years in the military. We lived 25 minutes away from each other in the same county. Yeah. He likes Arsenal. And as soon as I met Daniel, I said, where are you from? He said, Bournemouth. I said, no way, I'm from Wiltshire. And he went, no way. I said, what football team do you support? He said, Arsenal. I was like, sign me up.
Yeah, and then every morning they come in and check on the football scores. And that's just 15 minutes. I'm like, I'm not going to get them back. No. I'll go make a coffee.
Yeah. And then the similar thing happened with Naomi. She is originally from Brighton, which, as you know, is next door to Bournemouth. It's another little seaside town. So we all had these very strange connections in the room that as soon as, so essentially, can I say that I came up? Yeah. Okay, so in the second part of the audition process, I came up again to Queensland to audition with other parents and different coupling and stuff like that. So I'd met a lot of different actors, and Dan was so kind enough to say, I'm really interested to know what your opinion is of these performers and how you connect them, and if you're comfortable with certain performers, and could you see yourself, playing their son? And I was like, oh, this is such a big responsibility to be so brutally honest about it. But when I read with these wonderful people, I immediately just found the connection more than what was within the script. And I said to them, like, as soon as they left the door, I was like, yes, please, yes, this person. Just because I knew that this is an incredibly emotional story, and half the work is done if you connect with somebody. And for me, developing relationships I found particularly tricky in my life. And so having a little insight or a little something that was automatically there meant that I could just breathe, and I didn't have to stress about making friends, because so much of it was already done. It was just, yeah.
Thank God for Arsenal, really. You know,
for
I mean,
Arsenal.
it could all have fallen apart on a football team, really. Now, obviously, there's a great chemistry between this whole group of artists working. I would like to extend that out to you, our Queensland Theatre family. Are there questions that you would like to ask of them as you consider what your journey with this play is going to be? Yes?
Without getting into spoiler territory, can you provide some explanation of the title?
No, we cannot.
No, we can. We can. No?
We cannot.
Are you going to protect that? Oh, look at me. I'm like, yeah!
What,
Do the ending!
what we can say is when you meet the character, his name is Drizzle Boy. That is the character's name, and that's what we'll say. It's not like a nickname or anything. It is the character's name.
Oh, that's so can we say no, nothing.
Otherwise, why would they come and see it?
They're coming to see it.
But the name will make sense.
The name will make sense.
The penny will drop and go. The penny will drop.
It is a major moment in the play, the explanation for it. But
I'll tell you afterwards. I'll see you in the foyer.
okay. Have you approached professional advisors as you did with the Almighty Sometimes?
Yes, yes, 100%. The Almighty Sometimes was, my heart, a very, like this one. I get all the sad ones. I'm getting all the sad ones. No,
It's
the
not sad.
beautiful ones. Yes. You know the best thing about theatre? The best thing is I love working on plays where I learn about a whole other world. And I have learned so much about neurodiversity on this. And that is because, and I totally owe that to everyone I've spoken to. And I've spoken to a lot of parents. I've spoken to, yes, a lot of people with autism. I've also spoken the Griffith University Autism Centre of Excellence were probably a real highlight, as were Kat and Beck, who were kind of like, you're doing good, keep going. And I'd go to them and go, is this right? And they're like, yeah, just keep going, keep going. This is the work, the conversation, the wrestling with it, the grappling with how do you do this is the work. And that was really beautiful. And Professor Dawn from the Griffith University Centre of Excellence said to me, she gave me the best quote to understand everything I needed to understand. And she said, there's an amazing quote, I think by a Dutch philosopher, who said, if a flower is dying, what do you treat? And I was like, wow. And she's like, well, you treat the soil. And so much of the work that we do at the Autism Centre of Excellence and with autism is to treat the conditions that all these people exist inside of and have had to exist inside of, which is a lot of connected to a lot of Drizzle Boy's trauma. And I think what has been wonderful is to be part of enriching the soil and going, how can we create a theatrical experience or environment that is welcoming to everyone, and also to put artists in contact and conversation with each other who otherwise wouldn't. And seeing Ryan and Daniel connect in some of the first weeks of rehearsal, and for them to have that shared conversation of, this happened to me, this is wild. And that was probably one of the most special moments of the rehearsal, is seeing the writer and the actor meet in conversation and go, wow, this is what happens when you allow someone to be seen and to be witnessed. And that was pretty magical. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Sort of. Yes, I have. Talked to a lot of people.
All right, which would you like to start with? Matt, go for it.
Okay, we'll start with light, and then we'll go down the list to the more important people, the vision and the sound people. I was really privileged to actually start on this play from the ground up, in the ground floor, because I happened to be the partner of the set and costume designer, so I just happened to be around when they were doing their first meeting. So it was really good to be around in that process that Lee just intimated about earlier, where we came up with a design in 2 days. And I think it's very similar. I'm just kind of trying to be in simpatico with everything that everyone's been talking about tonight. It's Drizzle Boy's world, and we're trying to bring that to life. And as Daniel said earlier, we move backwards and forwards through all sorts of different time frames, sideways, forwards, backwards. And so the light's job really is to tell that story in this space and allude to the atmospheres that are in Drizzle Boy's explanation of his life.
Of course, the funny thing about light is we haven't seen any of it yet. He starts tonight. We can talk about set and design and the actors because that's the process of the rehearsal room, but you're up, buddy. Yep. How about you?
Yeah, the process for this play, particularly with sound, centres a lot on memory and how sound and song can land us very quickly in a memory. The story, the play, very much exists within Drizzle Boy's world, and it is his story. And like all of us, as we tell our story and live our story, we drop into different memories, and this story is very much one of those. So it moves very quickly, and from literally one place and time to another. And sound is a big part of assisting that and maintaining the pace, because it cracks along like a conversation of people that are very familiar with each other. They just go at a conversation. And this is a story like that. So we've done a lot of work and a lot of conversations about how sound can help that. Help us land in a story and a memory within the story, and help us transition location and keep it moving, because it does move so quickly. Yeah, there's a lot of cues.
And interestingly, that sound space has been built in the rehearsal room in relationship to the to the characters that are evolving. So that's been
absolutely.
We hear that in the rehearsal room, and working upstairs, you can hear the sounds coming through the wall through the day, and you start going, I wonder what that bit's going to be. Yeah. So that's for us in the company. It's usually the first little tidbit that we get of what's coming at different times of the day. You know, at a certain point, about a couple of things are starting to aggravate, but now you're down in the theatre, so that's good.
It happens.
And we've got As You Like It moving in upstairs,
Yeah.
which is going to be a completely different soundscape, so that's quite good.
Yeah. The rehearsal process has been wonderful because it is so tight. The storytelling is very tight, and so therefore it's been really important to integrate with the performers in the room as it is developing.
And so as the psychology of Drizzle Boy has been growing, as that space, this world, and the perspective we're seeing the world through, that lens, the sound space of that has been growing. Has it surprised you?
I think it has. There have been moments within the play that I have been incredibly moved by, and often in that case, my instinct is to stay out of the way, because if I see it evolve on the floor with a performer and it moves me, I'm like, that's the gold. That is the absolute gold in live theatre. It's when a performer stands up and does nothing but give you a story and it touches you. So often in that case, I stay the hell out of the way.
Yeah, don't wreck it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It feels like it could just break. So, but in this case, there's been a few of those where I've been very reticent to get involved, but in many of them, it's actually been really positive to get involved and heighten the story, heighten the space, because it is very much in one person's world, one character's world. The whole play lives within one character's world. So it really helps us to take in that story, because it's not told the way most stories are, where one character begins, tells their story, another character enters and tells their story. It's all coming from a singular character, and the other characters you meet exist within that character's understanding of the world. So it's been a great process in the room, and I'm sure it will still evolve this week, because it is one of those things. You see it evolve and go, oh no, it's more than I thought it was, or it's actually don't do that anymore.
Oh, so, okay. So after the mention of the Britfest, what accents are we going to be exposed to?
Well, mum and dad, they sort, they're from South England, and he speaks like that. And then there's Johann Friedrich Karl Esberger, and he is from Austria, and he's very lovely. And then there's Google, who has to be American because he's got too much to say. Sorry to the Americans. No, but and what else have we got? And Baphomet is an Australian. Yeah, he's just the devil inside Drizzle Boy's mind, and
That's the Kevin Spink show reel, everybody.
yeah, yeah.
Wowzers trousers. He also can ride horses as well.
Yeah.
I do a Russian cosmonaut, which
What's
has
that sound
been.
like?
And we've been working with an amazing dialect coach called Gabriella Rogers, who watched the run this afternoon. And she actually didn't have too many notes for us, did she? Which was a relief, which was a big relief. But yeah, it's cool to use like kind of our own accents in the show. And then obviously Kev and I having to do Australian accents is also like we have to check ourselves as well, even though we've been here for a while. But yeah, Russian, German, British, American, Australian.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Oh, and Dustin Hoffman. Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot. And like Kev said, we both change costumes 20 times in the show each. So it's about an average of every 4 minutes and 2 seconds.
Yeah, and there's costume changes that will happen here, and then you've got to get to that entrance within 38 seconds.
Yeah.
There's a great map up in the rehearsal room that gives you the amount of time it takes to run from that entrance to that one, and you have to actually allow for that. But someone did the math a couple of years ago. So at different speeds, walking, running, So it's. But what's exciting about Best of the Brits is that there's nothing to say what an Australian play looks or sounds like. And in the new play space, a play that actually reaches out to the whole world is wonderful. I mean, Michael Gow was always a huge proponent of making Australian plays be anywhere in the world. This is an Australian play. It's written by a beautiful writer who lives in Tasmania, played by a group of actors who've been pulled to Australia from within 20 minutes of each other on the other side of the world. But it's part of the great Australian story, is that our stories don't have to sound any one way to be inherently Australian. And I think there is something beautifully Australian or audacious inside this writing that, despite the odd, British accent, speaks to us as an Australian audience in a way that is distinctively Australian. So I was actually quite thrilled to know that it would sound like a play that belongs to the world when actually it belongs to us. Yeah. Oh, here we go.
Hello. I have a question for any of you who feel like answering. If you could imagine that down the line the show's being put on again by a new company, is there anything you could say to that company?
Well, let's say when there is a company that does it down the line, because it's a beautiful play and they're going to want to. What would you? The question is, what would you have to say to that company?
Good luck.
In the Amazon. Hack a knife.
I think my advice would be a common theme tonight, which is putting neurodivergence at the center of the work, having those authentic voices in the room, in your life, surrounding you to advise you every step of the way is the only way forward with this particular piece. And I would second what Dan Evans said, which is you go into it not really knowing anything about what you're about to do, and you learn so much. So just being open to this particular piece as an incredible learning tool and a window into a world that you can never experience as a neurotypical person, but how privileged you are to be able to spend 90 minutes inside this beautiful brain.
Just for the actors, hearing that the script was
I should also say that, like, look, you look.
Okay, so the question was, how did it feel? How did you learn your lines, knowing that the text was changing up until Saturday? And you said that it's surprising. Not that surprising to us. New plays happens all the time.
And I think that part of that was also Ryan was here for week 1, and he went away, and we would work together. So the actors would be on the floor. I would have a live document open in front of me, and I would be seeing Ryan typing his rewrites live, and I would be feeding the actors the new line while they were on the floor. Modern technology, right? And that is out of a collective desire that I've got with Ryan and this entire team to go, we want this to be the best it can be. And you can lock it off and go, we'll do that version. But we were all going, no, there's a leaner, meaner, more beautiful version if we just get tighter, if we just keep going. And Ryan was like, in Sydney, typing away. He had minor surgery, then he's like, I'm back. And I'd see his cursor in the document and go, he's back online, guys. Here he comes. It was wild, wasn't it?
Yeah. I would say my process, if not necessarily a process, but the thing that I always did pretty much every single night was read the entire script back to front to back, or back to front, depending how I felt. And the main reason I did that is because I wanted to learn everybody's lines, not just my own, because I knew that my lines could potentially change. But as long as I know what's happening in the scene, I have an idea of where it's going to go. For my character, it's not chronological, but there is logic into where he goes. And we spent a lot of time around the table mapping that out, which was really helpful, like doing sort of like a palm card brainstorm thing where we write down every scene, the function of the scene, the crux of it, the emotional beat, and how that projects you into the next one. That was incredibly helpful because it just meant that I knew exactly what the play was. No matter what Ryan sent through, I knew what it was kind of going to be. I could kind of predict it in a way. There were some moments where it was completely different, and I was like, oh, this is a new scene. I've got to actually learn this. But yeah, my main thing was pretty much every night I would read the entire script just to absorb as much as I can.
The changes were never because it wasn't great. We read it, the first novel version, sat down under lights, and the people that watched it were crying. So we're like, okay, we're cool. But then we got it on the floor, and we're like, oh, this is running too long. We don't want an interval in this. How do we get the audience from the start to the end and break their hearts? And
put them back together again. And
put them back together again. And give them hope and break their hearts.
It's a really beautiful, happy ending for everyone.
It's gorgeous. But yeah, the changes, Daniel would say, as the central figure, you kept saying, I trust the process. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I have to trust the process.
And I think it's one thing to say, yes, the script has been changing, but that it's changing for the better. So it's not being changed and the group of actors suffer it. This is heading towards the best version of something. And also this production will not necessarily be the entire script, in that the published version will have more in it than what this production does, because a production, that bigger script is what inspires the production. And step by step it's been about, what does this production need? So there will be other versions of this that will offer slightly different perspectives depending on who's playing it, always with Ryan leading that process, but this production is a distillation, if you like, to meet this space, this audience, this time, and this group of actors. So that's always the nature of a new play. There's never a definitive version, if you like. There's the one that we make now, and another group will make a different version from that same material. That all being said, we're at time. And so even though there are many more questions coming up and a greater curiosity about the show, we have to do the Lucky Door Prize before we finish up and send this beautiful group of actors into their first plotting session. So as always, the receptacle for all of the tickets is reflective of a moment in the play, which... a fleeting moment in the play. All right. Oh, actually, no. Daniel or Nixon, would you like to draw the,
I would love
the winning ticket? And the prize is 2 tickets to see the Valkyrie, The Mystery of the Valkyrie, which is on at QPAC soon. So 2 tickets to that. And the lucky door prize goes to ticket. Be orange.
Red?
Red or orange?
Red.
Red.
Red A22.
Oh! Congratulations! Now, you are going to see Hannah at the box office, and she will organise your tickets for you.
I've never done that before.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation about Drizzle Boy. I hope it's piqued your interest. If there are other questions which you have a burning desire to have answered now, I'm sure you're pretty sure Dan's got another 5 minutes to meet you down the edge of the stage if they've got other questions. But they are about to embark on the week where they put all of the sound and lights into the space and piece together this magical new work. It is gorgeous. We had the company run where the whole company watches the actors up in the rehearsal room. We had that this afternoon, and it was devastating and beautiful and fresh and unlike any other play that I've seen in the last 20 years. So you are going to go on an extraordinary journey, and I want to take this one in-family moment to thank this gorgeous group of creators for what they're making. We'll all see you in the foyer once the play is made. Woohoo!
Night.